Hello to all of you out there, and welcome to Political Dharma with Alan Zundel. That's me. Today, I'm going to talk about getting beyond the two-party system here in the United States of America. Now, that from the start has been one of my central concerns in creating and perpetuating this channel. One of a few things, but in the forefront of my interest is not just talking about how to get beyond the two-party system, but proposing ideas for how to actually do that. This year, I have been focusing this channel on the presidential race, particularly on the non-major party candidates, for two reasons. Number one, I wanted to attract an audience who is dissatisfied with the two-party system. That is, people who are attracted to independent and minor party candidates would be more interested in what I have to say about the alternative to the two-party system, or a way of getting beyond that. And number two, because I knew that this presidential race could demonstrate to people who either were not aware of it or did not fully appreciate how difficult it is to get through the maze of ballot access requirements and major party obstacles and outright hostility to any other parties being on the ballot who might compete with them. So having done those two, having focused on the presidential race to do those two things, attract people with an interest outside the two major parties and demonstrate to some of you how difficult it actually is, that it's not really an open playing field at all, I found that as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. came forward as the most promising frontrunner among the alternative candidates, my focus started to center on his campaign, and it was interesting to watch for a while because there was the possibility or potential for Kennedy to pose a major challenge to the two parties and at least show a significant level of support or a significant level of dissatisfaction in the vote to support him with the two-party system. So that's who I began to focus on, and it was not to, my intention was not to promote a particular candidate or a particular party, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. or anyone else or any of these other alternative parties, but to do, as I said, have this broader perspective on the two-party system. Now, when Kennedy decided to suspend his campaign and throw his support to Donald Trump, I decided that I would not be going in that direction because it was not about challenging the two-party system, but rather entering into the two-party system and trying to change one of the major parties. And that's fine for someone who wants to pursue that, but it's not my interest. I think both paths need to be pursued because we never know which one is going to have success in moving us forward, either changing a party or trying to change the whole system. But I would say that it's my opinion that the election of an individual person to office is not going to solve our major problems, no matter who it is, whether it's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. or Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump or Kamala Harris or anyone else. I don't think just electing somebody is going to really address the root causes of the problems we're facing, because number one, the system that we live within puts constraints on who can actually get elected. And you can see that in this process of trying to get through the maze if you're not part of the major party. Even if you are part of the major party, who gets to be a candidate is not a totally predetermined process, but it's one that attempts very successfully to weed out certain kind of candidates. So no matter who you may be backing, they're not going to be able to change things themselves because it'll be difficult for them to get elected if they are not a supporter of the larger system. And number two, even if they do get elected, somehow get through all of those obstacles and hurdles, it's hard for an elected official to change the system that they're operating within. The system itself puts restraints or constraints on what they're able to accomplish. And that's easy to see if you just think about how a president has to get the Congress to act in certain ways or to get the judicial system to agree with what they're trying to do. So I think there has to be systematic change, systemic change, rather than just trying to elect somebody or get a particular party advance further. Okay, so what is the solution I'm going to propose? I do have ideas for larger systemic changes that need to be accomplished, but the first step is to get beyond this two-party system, because that is the obstacle to doing anything else. And the usual strategies for challenging the two-party system would be, number one, backing alternative candidates and parties, and number two, changing the electoral system itself. That is, the way we vote, the way we fill out our ballots and how those ballots are counted. On the first one, alternative candidates and parties, the problem here, as I've learned through painful experience, and many of you are probably also learning or already know, is that there are usually when alternative candidates or parties emerge, they take a particular set of issues or ideological position and try to attract more people to that, whereas the broad range of people who are dissatisfied with the major parties are not going to agree with that set of that set of issues or that ideological position necessarily, and to try to bring them over to your side takes a long time, and if you're not getting very far in the electoral process, it's hard to even get their attention. So the forces that are trying to overcome the two-party system get divided between different parties with different ideologies and different candidates with different positions and even personalities. People often say, well, there's this huge number of independents who are not affiliated with either major party, and that's true. But that doesn't mean they're all ready to jump on board somebody's campaign or a party's platform simply because they are not a major party. You have to persuade them. And so we need a way to unite all these forces that doesn't rely on ideologies that not everybody's going to buy into. Has to be a broader platform that they can agree upon. And by platform, I do not mean a policy platform. I mean some basis for working together, some kind of minimal set of principles that they can all pursue together. So that would be one path, and the problem with it, the other path is to change electoral methods. Now, I worked in this area for a long time, and the problem here, as I also learned, is that there are a lot of different potential voting methods. There's not only our usual first past the post, that is, you're limited to picking one candidate and have no way to express yourself on any of the other candidates that you did not pick, and the one who gets the most votes wins. So that's a pick only one, most votes wins method that's very familiar to us, probably the worst system that we could have. Then there's a top two system where everybody runs together in one primary and the top two go to the general election. There's also ranked choice voting, which is becoming more and more better known. There's approval voting, which has its adherents, and they've had campaigns to get it, and I think they succeeded in at least one city. And then there's been star voting proponents like myself. I moved from ranked choice voting to star voting when I became aware of it. But there are different voting methods, and there is not agreement on which one is the best one to pursue. There are disagreements on which would work better, what the criteria for working better would be, and also whether you should simply go with one that already has a lot of support, or you should go with one that's lesser known but may work better. So there are a lot of issues to resolve within the camp of people trying to reform the election system. That's one problem. The other problem is simply that the wider public does not see the relevance of electoral change in electoral methods. They see it as peripheral, is that a word? Peripheral to their main concerns. Like, you may have concerns about the economy, you may have concerns about your security, or about war going on, about how your taxes are being used, and it's not obvious what the electoral system has to do with any of that. So it's hard to get people's attention to make that a priority, and it's also hard to get people to agree on what method we want to try to promote and to move toward. So those are the usual strategies, one being promoting a party or candidate, the other one being promoting electoral reform, and they each have their problems. So what I want to put forward is a way that I think could both unite a lot of different people of different political orientations into one program, not that they have to give up what they're doing or their party that they are working within, or everyone agree to one candidate, but simply find a way that they can work together towards something. And that something would be like a political party in some ways and unlike a political party in other ways. It would be a political organization that is open to many points of views, many ideologies, many people representing different minor parties or candidates, and they could all engage in discussions and debate and listen to different candidates and proponents of various systems, and then vote using one of these alternative voting methods that would choose the candidate with the broadest support. Now that would do a couple of things. One, using a different electoral method would demonstrate how much better that would work than our current system of voting. And number two, by selecting someone as a candidate with broad support, it would give that candidate a way to get to attract attention among the wider public outside of this project. If you can say, look, I belong to this organization that has many different parties and points of view represented, and we all discussed and debated and voted, and I'm the one who emerged as their candidate of choice for this office, well, then there's there's a reason there that people may want to pay attention to you, that you were able to get broad support from a lot of different people. So it would be a way of promoting a particular candidate, and that would not mean that everybody who participated in this process would have to support that candidate or give up running their own candidate in their own party. It would simply mean that they see the value in participating as a way of promoting their own ideology, bringing it to the attention of more people, and possibly even getting a candidate of their choice or one close to their position to get more public recognition and get a boost in visibility. Maybe even to use that organization as a sort of a party to have a ballot line in its name, and then the candidate they choose would be able to get their name on the ballot and bypass all these requirements for gathering signatures in different states and all the other requirements you would need to get on the ballot. So say if a candidate comes along, either as a minor party candidate or an independent candidate like RFK, who is able to get a lot of support, that they would automatically have a ballot line that they could accept from that organization if it chose them as its candidate. And so there would be an incentive for people to vie for that nomination, as it were. Now, how would this actually work in practice? What would be the advantages to various parties or people from different orientations to agree to that? Well, I think it's a model of how our larger system should work. And by both demonstrating a better electoral system, electoral voting method reform would be able to get further in demonstrating it to a lot of different people, showing the advantages of it and how it could work. And that would benefit independent minor party candidates in itself by pushing forward an agenda of voting method reform. And also it would give all those parties the opportunity to engage in a debate that would get attention from people beyond their own party or beyond their own point of view, try to persuade them from one perspective to another or bring it to people who hadn't heard of them, and possibly to get their candidate additional support by getting them a nomination. And in some states, you can have the nomination of more than one party, so you could have the you could be on the ballot line for this organization as well as your own party. Of course, that depends state by state on their laws for getting on the ballot, whether it would be advantageous to actually try to use this organization to gain a ballot line or not. So that would be a case-by-case basis. It's not necessary to the project, but it's a possibility. Another possibility, like here in California, where getting on the ballot is not something you, only for the presidential race is a party necessary to get on the ballot. Here, you could have a entrance fee for the different candidates and then use that pot of money to award it to the winner in the election. So they would have a way to pay the filing fee to get on the ballot. So it could be an advantage to somebody winning there as well. So that would be an incentive for people to take part. No requirement to support the candidate who emerges, no requirement to give up your own party, simply a way to participate in a larger set of, in a larger group of people to show you, all these people, what they have in common is they don't want to support a major party candidate. And they have different perspectives on that, and they can all get together, debate, discuss, and then use a good voting system to determine who has the broadest support. Would be a good exercise for everybody, I think. Which voting method could be used? That could be a hang-up, because if you tried to start out by saying, okay, let's all get together and discuss which voting method we should use, I think that would hold up the project too long. So what I would suggest doing is simply starting with a method and then allowing that to be up for discussion going forward. That is, you have a starting position that you're going to use, but you're open to considering changing it at some future date if someone can make a case that there is a system that would work better than the one you started off with. And the one I would start off with, since I am promoting this project, this is where it's starting, is star voting. Having looked into a lot of different systems, I think this would be the best method for voting here in the United States for a number of reasons that I won't go into right now, and I will go into in discussions as we go forward. But I would start off with star voting as a way of choosing candidates for particular offices, and then being open to all these different points of view and all these different parties and candidates other than major party candidates. The principles, the minimal principles to agree to give this some coherence would be, number one, the devotion to the principle of reason, right? That we believe not just in using superior power to get your way, but to persuade people through the use of reason and evidence. Now, this is an Enlightenment principle that the whole modern project of democratic governance was based on, or you could say constitutional republics, if you don't really believe we're fully a democracy, which we aren't, but I think we should move more towards democratic system. But the idea is that, everybody has a capacity for reason. Most people have a capacity for reason. Some people have cognitive disabilities, but most people have a capacity for reason, and to develop that through discussion, debate, presentation of evidence, the whole shot, the things that the Enlightenment brought to the forefront, that we should reason our way through our problems rather than relying just on tradition or some kind of religious authority or authority of some other kind. So devotion to reason and discussion and debate and all that kind of open debate, which is not really something that our system here now is open to. There are certain ways that it keeps certain points of view off the table and suppresses other points of view. Anything that challenges the current two-party system and those who have control over the two parties is pushed off the table. So it has to be open discussion and debate on the principle of reason. And the other thing would be the principle of empathy, human empathy. And I'm using this word to mean something that it may not mean to everyone. When the Enlightenment created systems like the United States Project, the Constitution, and the Declaration of Independence, the assumption they started with was all men at the time, but all human beings are created equal. Well, that's not necessarily a rational principle, because you can see in a lot of ways people are unequal in one way or another. So there have been challenges to this whole Enlightenment project based on perception that one set of people is going to be superior to another, and that those are the people or class of people or race that should be in control. And those are, they're usually called illiberal movements, and liberal here means, the principles of personal freedom and human equality and those other principles that are espoused in the Declaration of Independence. So where empathy comes in is this commitment to the principle that the capacity to recognize other human beings as having being worthy of having their interests seriously considered would have to be also committed to. That is, we have a capacity to develop our empathy just as we have the capacity to develop our reason. So it would be an exercise in attempting always to include within our compass people who are not like us and try to understand and appreciate their point of view or their interests, their concerns. That would be the other principle. I'm calling it empathy, and this is often tied to religion or spirituality. When you hear people talking about the founders of this country and how they thought religion was important to the project, they were not trying to create a Christian nation, at least at the time they wrote the Constitution. What they were doing is assuming there was already a Christian culture, and that this promoted this idea that people are equal in the sense that God created us all equal, and moral codes that had us that would induce people to treat each other better. Thou shalt not kill, love thy neighbor as thyself, and that kind of thing. That they saw that as necessary to holding a society together, even though they are not strictly speaking based on rational philosophy. They are important principles to social cohesion and our ability to continue to have faith that reasoning things through together is not going to disadvantage a particular group, but we all have a stake in this and we're all willing to let each other be part of it. So that kind of empathy, as I said, it's often connected to religion, but it's not necessarily so. I think in the modern world, it's probably closer connected to spirituality because people make this distinction between the dogmatic aspects of religion that tend to divide people, to sort people into those with the true faith and those without, those who have the right principles from God and those who do not, or those who have the correct path to human development or salvation or enlightenment or whatever it happens to be. So rather than having the religious trappings, there's this more modern idea of spirituality, which is simply a way of saying we try to get in touch with what our humanity has in common and maybe some higher sense of who we are that's based on who knows what, however you want to frame it, God or something else. But the idea that at our core, we are all the same, we are all worth your respect. So those would be the minimal principles that would have to be adhered to, I would think, to make a project like this work. And again, the idea is to both model to the wider public and the larger society how our society could be functioning better and could move forward if it adopted some of what we're trying to do with this, and also at the same time be able to challenge the two-party system by putting forward candidates with broad support and allowing parties and people who all have dissatisfaction with the two major parties to work together towards something that doesn't require them to commit to particular platform positions or ideologies at the outset, as you would usually when you join a political party. So that is the project in a nutshell, and that is one of the things I will be talking about further along with other stuff as we go forward, just so you have a sense of what this channel is about and where I'm heading with it. Now, as the presidential campaign continues, I will continue to talk about that. I am interested to see how it turns out. Who is president is a consequential decision, but our individual votes are not that consequential because there are so many voting for president, and the way our system works, only the people in swing states have a lot of clout. But I'll be interested to watch and see how the campaigns develop and how the vote turns out, and if Trump wins, if Kennedy is able to have any influence over him, and how the Republican Party evolves, and if the Democrats win, how people who did not want the Democrats to win or third party candidates, how they regroup and what they try to do next, or whether people within the Democratic Party continue to try to push in one direction or another. All that interests me, but it is secondary. I will be covering the presidential campaign and talking about the results of it, but also I want to make sure I am giving you a heads up that this is where I'm headed, and this is what I'm going to be incorporating more and more, is talking about how we can move beyond this two-party system and why we should. So thanks for watching. That was kind of long-winded, but I thought it was important at this juncture as I shift from attention on Kennedy. And I lost a lot of viewers because as they started to see that my coverage of Kennedy was becoming less the center of my focus, and they wanted to just support Kennedy, were not that interested in the challenges to the two-party system per se. So a lot of those migrated elsewhere, I think. And those of you who remained either remained because you already grasped that my focus is on challenging the two-party system and you're interested in that, or because maybe you saw in me something that you found interesting enough that you want to stick around and see where I go next. So for you, this is where I'm going. That's it. On the weekend, I will be doing my usual updating on the presidential campaign, I think. And also I'm doing an interview tomorrow, which I probably will not put up until next week, which is a little outside both what I talked about today and what I've been talking about in the presidential campaigns. But I think it'll be intriguing. It involves political moral courage. Somebody wrote a book and their agent came to me asking if I would like to do an interview. So it's a little outside my usual sphere, but I think it could be interesting. So those are the things that are coming up. Thanks for watching. As always, this is Political Dharma. You could check out my website, politicaldharma.com, or my Patreon page, patreon.com/politicaldharma. I'm Alan Zundel. Thanks for watching. Bye.